Trust me, this anime is simply amazing. Seriously, go ahead and drop a like right now. If by the end of the video you think I'm exaggerating, you can come back and take it away, no hard feelings. But I doubt that'll happen because what I'm about to tell you is pure cinema. So, no more delays, let's get into it. The story kicks off with a strong impact. A boy standing at the edge of an abyss, about to jump. He's broken, convinced that he's weak, that he's never done anything worthwhile. And just as he finally takes the leap, he starts questioning himself. Is there really no meaning in being alive? In the end, he feels like he's never achieved anything, always been treated like trash, and now he's going to die as one. But hold on, before all that, we go back in time to see the same boy with a group of adventurers. They're fighting some monsters, and in the middle of the battle, the protagonist tries to attack one but fails to finish it off. That's when Jolene, the group's mage, steps in. He asks her to cast a spell, and out of nowhere, a fireball straight at the giant rat. It seems like overkill, but hey, at least the monster's dead, right? After the fight, the usual argument starts. You were the one who won. No, it was you. But then they remember the other member of the group, the so-called trash picker, who is none other than the protagonist. He's there, loaded with bags, looking like a pack mule, and when they call on him to do the dirty work, he tries to protest. My name isn't trash picker, but before he can finish, and trips and immediately blames him even more. That's when Jolene tells Zoid to take it easy, reminding him that the protagonist doesn't have a strong class like they do. And that's where we start to understand how this world works. It's explained that everyone is born with an occupation granted by two goddesses, the goddess of light, who determines the profession, and the goddess of darkness, who bestows abilities. Skills can be trained and improved, but the occupation, that's hereditary, passed down from generation to generation, and it can't be changed. Which basically means that if you were born into wealth, congrats. If not, good luck. Occupations are divided into 3 levels. Rare, the big shots like wealthy merchants and military strategists. High common, warriors, mages, people who can fight like Zoid and Jolene. Low common, farmers, appraisers, and those who have no aptitude for battle like the protagonist. And here's where our hero's problem comes in. Since he lost his parents early, he couldn't follow the family business and ended up in this adventurer life, dreaming of getting rich. But reality hit hard, and he wound up in a job where his role is basically scavenging leftovers. During the mission, he examines the dead monster and realizes its teeth are still valuable. But when he tries to pry open the creature's mouth, rigor mortis has already set in. He asks his companions for help, and their response? Pure disdain. Zoid mocks him, asking why the hell he would put his hands on that disgusting rat since that's his job. And to top it all off, they even throw a rock at him. The protagonist gets pissed. He glares at Zoid with pure rage, but the guy doesn't like that one bit. He stands up, charges at him, and sends the boy flying with a single blow. And to make things worse, Jolene rubs it in his face, listing everything they do for him, forcing the boy to swallow his pride and keep working, sticking his hands into that slimy monster. And that's just the introduction. Want to know what happens next? Stay tuned, because this story only gets better. The monster's slimy tongue hangs out of its mouth, and the protagonist can only think the world isn't fair. As he's there, wrist deep in filth, Jolene lets out a mocking laugh, and Zoid, as always, takes a jab at him. This is your job, right? But you know what? You're not even good at that. According to him, they didn't even need the protagonist there. They could have just taken the corpse to the guild and used a magic stone for evaluation. In other words, the trash picker wasn't that necessary after all. And Ein, our protagonist, starts to accept that label. In the end, he really was just someone who rummaged through corpses to extract materials. And the worst part, the only reason they let him join the group was because Zoid didn't want to dirty his precious magic bag. As if that wasn't humiliating enough, they even tell him he should be grateful. And swallows hard. In the end, he'd be a trash picker or whatever else he needed to be to survive. But then, something strange happens. As they move through the dungeon, they stumble upon the corpse of a monster that simply shouldn't be there. And immediately senses that something's off. He speaks up, but Zoid, as impatient as ever, just tells him to shut up and do as he's told, kicking him toward the creature. And the worst part, the group sees it as luck. A dead hellhound lying in their path means a big payout from selling materials. While they start celebrating and planning what they'll do later, spoiler, something hot at the inn, Ein, frustrated, examines the monster and realizes it was a B rank. Things only get stranger. As they continue, they find more monster corpses scattered across the floor. Ein warns them again, something is seriously wrong. This shouldn't be happening, and the best option would be to turn back. But Zoid, he completely ignores him and keeps moving forward. And if Ein wants to leave, fine, but he better leave his backpack behind and forget about getting paid for the mission. With no other options, the protagonist swallows his pride, apologizes, and keeps following the two idiots. And that's when things really take a dark turn. They stumble upon a horrifying scene, a trail of massacred bodies. While the two idiots celebrate the amount of loot they can get from this, I notices something that no one else wants to admit. Who killed all these monsters? If it were adventurers, why didn't they take the rewards? Before he can push the issue further, Zoid loses his patience and tells him to shut up. But then, Ein senses something's off. The atmosphere shifts. The air turns heavy. Hey, look behind you. He turns around, ground, and in the darkness, dozens of glowing eyes stare back at them. A horde of hellhounds. But something is wrong. They're attacking each other, devouring each other. Pure cannibalism. Panic sets in. Jolene, trembling, asks what they should do. But Zoid, he just smirks and looks at her. Jolene, cast a spell on Ein. The boy barely has time to react. 1 second, he's confused. The next, boom, a bolt of lightning strikes him, paralyzing his entire body. He collapses, helpless. Zoid steps closer, flashing a disgusting grin as he looks at the starving beasts. Here's your meal. Enjoy. And without a second thought, he and Jolene sprint for the exit, leaving Ein behind. The protagonist tries to scream, to beg for help, but the words die in his throat. What comes next is brutal. The ravenous hounds pounce. Teeth tear into his flesh, blood spills, pain explodes through him. But then, something happens. The shock of extreme agony snaps him out of the paralysis. With every ounce of strength he has left, he breaks free, shoves the monsters away, and starts running, limping, bleeding. When he finally reaches the exit, it's collapsed. Those bastards blocked the way to keep the monsters from following them, and in the process, ensured Ein couldn't escape either. Rage consumes him, but then he notices a small side passage. With no other choice, he follows it, only to discover that there's nothing there, just darkness. And now, meanwhile, something very strange was happening, and our protagonist simply threw himself into the abyss. The fall felt endless. The wind tore at his skin, and he had already accepted his fate. But instead of smashing into the ground, he hit the water, sinking near some giant roots. And that's when she appeared. A girl materialized out of nowhere, moving like she was lagging in real life, teleporting from one point to another. Without saying a word, she approached, placed a kiss on his forehead, and vanished. Ein woke up later, completely healed. He blinked, confused, trying to make sense of his surroundings. Using his appraisal skill, he realized where he was, standing before the Tree of Life. In that world, mana was everything. They breathed it, exhaled it, and it originated from the legendary Tree of Life. But according to legend, that tree had withered away and disappeared ages ago. And yet, mana still existed, and no one knew why. People had searched the entire world for answers and found nothing. Now I knew. The answer was right here, in a place so deep that no one had ever thought to look. He touched the tree, grateful. Was it you who saved me? At that moment, a strange sound echoed, a soft moan. One of those typical anime girl moans. Ein frowned. Did I just hear that? He decided to ignore it. He had bigger problems now. First, there was no food here. Second, he couldn't just accept what those two bastards had done to him. So he stood up, took a deep breath, and made a decision. Before starving to death, he needed to fight. He looked at the tree one last time, gave his thanks, and set off back into the dungeon. The mysterious girl, still lingering nearby, opened her mouth as if to say something but hesitated. She simply watched him leave. As Ein crossed the boundary between this place and the dungeon, he noticed something. This area wasn't on the map. And if it wasn't on the map, then anything could be in here. If there were B-rank hellhounds, who was to say there wasn't something even worse? But he had no choice. His only option was to move forward. No weapon, no food, no direction. He did the only thing he could, picked up a rock from the ground and gripped it tightly. And so he walked. Silence swallowed everything. He started to relax until the sound of a blade slicing through the air. A dull thud. Ein blinked. Something had hit the ground. His ear. Blood dripped, splattering onto the cold stone floor. He didn't even have time to react. A chilling sensation crawled up his spine as he felt something behind him. Slowly, he turned. And there it was. A demon. An S-rank monster. Terror gripped his body. Bleeding, missing fingers, he tried to compare this creature to the B-rank hellhounds, but it was pointless. The demon lunged. Its blade slashed through his skin, carving into his flesh. And at that moment, Ein realized something crucial. Knowing an enemy's rank meant nothing if he didn't have the strength to fight them. He had to run. But before he could take a single step, the demon struck again. Or at least, it tried. This time, the attack stopped mid-swing. Something was off. Ein's gaze shifted behind the demon, searching for an answer. And then he saw it. The monster that had killed another monster. A death bear, S-rank as well. With terrifying ease, the bear obliterated the demon. And now, its eyes were locked onto Ein. Its roar crashed like thunder, shaking everything. Ein froze. Then, the death bear's claws rose. A devastating slash tore across his face. His vision darkened. His eye was split in half like a lemon being cut open. Blood gushed out. Now, blind in one eye, deafened, mutilated, missing fingers, his body shredded. Ein crawled across the ground, dragging himself forward like a wounded animal. The end seemed inevitable, but was it? Ein tried to crawl toward the exit. He had to get out of there. He had to survive. But the death bear wasn't going to let that happen. Before he could escape, the massive creature grabbed him with one of its paws, squeezing with overwhelming force. His bones started to crack, blood rose to his throat, and he was already on the brink of death when, slash, a swift attack. The enormous beast simply stopped, and then its head rolled across the ground. Ein could barely process what was happening. There, amidst the chaos, a girl appeared. With a bored expression, she sighed, wiping the blood off her blade. That was boring. The boy could barely breathe. breathe, but he heard her words. She really begged me to save you, and here I am, even though I didn't want to, saving a mere human.
Stiana mia.
Human, asterisk. I didn't even have time to respond before blacking out again. When he woke up, he was back at the Tree of Life, his body intact, his wounds healed, his eyes different, literally. Now, each one was a different color. Still disoriented, he looked around and then saw her. The girl who saved him was standing there, staring directly at him. And at that moment, Ayn had only one thought. She's beautiful. She looked like a fairy straight out of a fantasy tale. Her gaze remained locked onto his, intense, enigmatic. And my friends, after everything this guy went through in this episode, I can't wait to see how he's going to get out of this one. If you want the continuation, you know what to do. Drop a like, subscribe, and I'll bring more for you guys. I'm out. Rocket.